Today, a lot of us are worried about the ethanol blending. Politicians will want to cover this deficit through another means. And what is the other means? That is ethanol blending. Instead of pumping in petrol into the combustion chamber, we are actually pumping in ethanol plus water. And this is the origin of misfires and engine stalling. And you'll end up flooding the engine, which means your engine will not start. You will actually have to preheat the fuel before it goes into the combustion chamber. And how do you heat the fuel? You'll have to use your battery. And what happens when your battery is low? This will become a problem when China will still have the ability to control the lithium, which they are heavily subsidizing today. I own a Duke 250 and recently it has been cutting off every now and then. I'm facing a lot of issues where I'm about to overtake and my engine cuts off. And I'm not just alone in this. Today, a lot of us are worried about the ethanol blending and the various problems that we are all facing with the E20 fuel. While there are a lot of people out there who will tell you what the problems are, in this channel, we will tell you why the problems occur. We will break down the ethanol blending problem in 3 simple steps. Number 1, we'll identify why the government is pushing down on ethanol so heavily on us. Number 2, we will understand what are the problems that we face with ethanol blending. And number 3, we will understand what can we do as customers of pre-E20 compliant fuel so that we can address and ensure that our vehicles are safe. Welcome to Hennis Garage and this is Hennis Breakdown. The government is trying to address 3 crises with ethanol blending. First is the forex reserve. Every time we buy crude oil from the market, we actually have to buy the US dollar first and then use the US dollar to actually buy 85% of India's crude demand. Second is the energy security. Imagine electricity. Anytime when we need electricity, we are not dependent on any other country. We have enough coal reserve that we can burn to generate electricity. Is it the cleanest form? No. But are we dependent on somebody else for our needs? No. We can't say the same when it comes to our fuel needs. India is heavily dependent on fuel, and the recent geopolitical tensions clearly showed us how a war in the Middle East can actually affect Indian households. The third crisis, which is not really a crisis for us, but for the politicians, today there is about 2000 crores of ethanol capacity that is available, of which only 1100 crores is the demand that is available. And the alcohol consumption is also going lower. The politicians will want to cover this deficit through another means. And what is the other means? That is ethanol blending. And who owns all of these sugar mills? It is not just the governing party, it's also the opposition. So that's why you do not see enough opposition on this matter. So what other options are actually available to solve this crisis? Why not go fully electric? There are 2 problems that are there today which is stopping us from going fully electric. First is the energy density. If you consider the volume of our petrol tank, to have the same energy that is there in your fuel tank, you will need a battery pack which is multiple times bigger. Second is the lithium dependency. Today, China controls majority of the lithium reserves of the world. If we go fully electric tomorrow, China will still have the ability to control the lithium, which they are heavily subsidizing today. Now that we know why the government is pushing heavily on ethanol blending, let's also understand what problems you and I, as owners of pre-E20 compliant vehicles, will actually face. Ethanol blending creates 3 specific problems. One is the mileage drop. Second is the damage to the engine. Third is the cold start problem. We'll understand each of these problems separately. Let's start with mileage drop. The major reason why you'll see a drop in mileage is because 1 liter of fuel previously would contain 12,000 watt hours per kg. Now, this is the unit of how much energy is available in the fuel. As opposed to this, pure ethanol, which is E100, only has 7400 watt hour per kg. Lithium ion has an energy equivalent of 250 watt hour per kg. So you see the difference in energy density across fuels. When we say E20, what it means is there is 20% of ethanol and 80% of fuel, which means 80% of this 12,000 units of energy plus 20% of 7400 units of ethanol. Now this brings the overall energy to 11,080, which is 8% lower than pure petrol. Now this results in a mileage drop that varies across different generations of vehicles. The BS6 phase 2 vehicles will see 3 to 4% drop in mileage. The BS6 phase 1 vehicles will see 5 to 7% of drop. The carbureted or two-stroke engines will see the majority drop, which will go beyond 10%. The next problem that is created is the engine damage. Engine damage happens in three ways. First is corrosion and seal damage. Second is misfires and stalling of engine. And third is water absorption. Let's understand each of these problems in detail. Corrosion. When you have aluminum or zinc alloys in your fuel line, what you will see is aluminum in the presence of ethanol forms oxides much faster than what it would before. And your rubber fuel lines will also see cracks. And this is something that is not going to happen on day one. This takes a long time to proceed, but it is important for us to keep a note on what is happening with our fuel lines and O-rings. The second problem that we face is AFR. AFR is air fuel ratio. Let's understand what this means and why it is important. Take the case of this engine here. What we see here is the air molecules and this is the fuel molecule. Now for the combustion of one fuel molecule, we will actually need 14.7 air molecules. Now whenever there are more than 14.7 air molecules, we tell that the engine is running lean. And whenever there is lesser air molecules or more fuel molecules compared to this 14.7, we say that the engine is running rich. One thing to notice, whenever the engine runs rich, it runs cooler. And whenever the engine runs lean, it runs hotter. Remember this because this is very important. Now the stoichiometric ratio for petrol is 14.7:1. This is when the combustion cleanly happens and all of the fuel is converted to energy. Whereas this ratio is 13.2:1 in case of E20 fuel. And what is our older engines tuned for? Our engines are actually tuned for 14.7. And what happens because of this? Our engine is actually running lean. And because of this, the temperatures inside the combustion chamber shoots up. This is what it looks like when you have a non-E20 compliant vehicle operating with E20 fuel. Now the same 14.7 air molecules just have 0.87 fuel molecules, which means the AFR, which was supposed to be 14.7, is now 16.9. You see how lean that is? And what happens because your engine is running lean? You will have hotspots created on the piston. You can see damage on the valves, and this will significantly increase how fast our engines wear out. And it also increases the NOx emissions. Hence, this is not even cleaner. The third problem that we face because of ethanol blending is water separation. Let's understand this with an example. Let's say you filled your tank with E20 and you leave it over a couple of days. What happens is ethanol is actually hygroscopic, which means it has a tendency to absorb moisture. And when you leave your vehicles over longer periods of time in idle state, you will see the ethanol absorbing water, and water is heavier than fuel. Because of this, it sinks into the bottom of the tank. And where is your fuel pump? It is also at the bottom. So instead of pumping in petrol into the combustion chamber, we are actually pumping in ethanol plus water. Previously, I've already told you that the engine is running leaner, which means the temperatures are already high. And what happens when you spray water into the combustion chamber now? The damage significantly goes up. And this is one of the major problems that any engine can have. And this is the origin of misfires and engine stalling. And this is not just because you leave your vehicle idle. This can also be created because of where you come from. If you are in coastal regions, this can be amplified. And let's say you have a loose tank cap. This is the problem that I'm facing on my Duke. On a rainy day, when I go to fill fuel in the petrol station, when I open the tank, what I see is there is water around the tank, which means there is water going into the tank previously as well. I had no problems then. But today, because ethanol is hygroscopic, this water today is actually regularly pumped into the combustion chamber, and the ethanol makes this problem worse. Now, the third problem, which we are not really facing today, but This is a problem that will come up once we increase the ethanol blend percentages. Now that is cold start problem. Let's understand how cold start problem will arise. On a cold morning, this is what your combustion chamber will look like when you crank. There is fuel that is sprayed into the combustion chamber. Now this fuel is in the form of vapors, and the ignition happens through the spark plug. When the spark plug ignites it, all of these vapors combust and your engine starts. Now one thing to notice, there is something called a flash point. Flash point is the temperature at which any fuel has vapors around it. The flash point of petrol is at minus 43 degrees, which means let's say you're at minus 45 or minus 50 degrees. If you try to ignite the fuel, there are not enough vapors available. And in case of ethanol, the flash point is plus 13 degrees Celsius. Now on a cold morning, let's say the temperature is 10 degrees Celsius and you have E100, at which point you will actually see droplets of the fuel instead of vapors, and the spark plug cannot effectively combust the droplets. You need vapors around it. Because of this, you will keep cranking the engine, and the more you crank, the more fuel you dump into the combustion chamber. All this fuel is in the liquid form and it is not combustible because your AFR is not right. And you'll end up flooding the engine, which means your engine will not start. Why this is not a problem today, this will become a problem when E85 is introduced. So a typical temperature in the winter season varies between 2 degrees to 15 degrees. Now E20 is somewhere here, the flash point is around minus 20 degrees, which means up till minus 20 degrees, you can still start your engine. But as soon as we go to E85, what happens is, on a cold morning, you will actually have to preheat the fuel before it goes into the combustion chamber. And how do you heat the fuel? You'll have to use your battery. And what happens when your battery is low? So all these problems will come up, and we have to equip ourselves to ensure that the machines we love are safe. Now that we have understood the problems that ethanol blending poses, let's also try and understand what we can do as customers of pre-E20 compliant vehicles to ensure that our vehicles are safer. Before we move on to the next section, I'd like to share something with you. It took a lot of effort to bring this video in front of you. It is very difficult to manage a 9 to 5 and create videos that I am passionate about. 90% of our viewers have not subscribed to our channel. We will promise to bring the best automotive content in front of you, and all you have to do is click on that subscribe button and share this with at least 3 people who might benefit from watching this video. Here are some of the things that we can do to ensure the safety of our vehicle. Try and understand which generation of vehicle you actually own, whether it is from the BS6 E20 compliant era, or is it from BS4 or pre-BS4 era. Inspect the fuel lines. It is important to see the condition of the fuel lines to ensure that there is no rupturing happening on the fuel line. A ruptured fuel line can create huge problems. Number 3. Always keep monitoring the mileage. Now what this does is, now if there is a change in mileage, you should be more worried about what is happening with the engine. There could be various reasons that I've previously mentioned that could be happening on your vehicle, and that is an indication to go get your vehicle checked. Number 4. Start replacing your fuel filters earlier than before. Previously, let's say your fuel filters were changed every 15,000 kilometers. Now it might be advisable to bring that down to 8,000 or 10,000. Number 5. Don't let the fuel sit in one position for more than 2 weeks. If you own a carbureted vehicle, what you can do is, before you have to store your vehicle for a long time, you turn the knob to off position, start the engine, rev it enough to ensure that the cup that holds the fuel is completely drained, and also ensure that you cover your fuel tank properly so that water does not enter into it. Number 6. If your vehicle has a carb, check the float needle every now and then to see if there are any impurities that have gone and stuck there. It becomes much more necessary than before to clean your carburetor during service. I hope all the OEMs come up with an updated map for the previous generation engines so that we can run it at the right AFRs and the tuning is actually right for E20 compliant engines. And I also hope there are upgrades available for the fuel lines, and all the rubber and aluminum components so that we don't have to face the problems that we might face. Thanks for watching this video till the very end. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, ride safe and Godspeed.